don't we start with you?
I'm the tiredest and the oldest. So, right. I have been doing drag for 30 years next year. There was no RuPaul when I started drag. I mean, RuPaul had created the song Supermodel, which was produced by Larry T, great queer DJ and kind of sonic icon. RuPaul existed. Ellen was coming out. It was cool to have a gay best friend, and but not like an actually like sexually active gay best friend. Just neutered, sterile gay best friend. So I failed at that task too. But I remember also I opened my mouth and a toilet falls out. I hope it's not meant to offend. I had to have clean language when I taught in the high school system in Calgary. And I've used up all of my good language points. So I don't know what the fuck that store was that was in the basement of Terrace on the Square, which used to be Terrace in the Square, which we referred to as Tits when I went to Gonzaga. But there was a bookstore that had a gay section, and I remember finding Gay Times magazine, and they had these kind of like nightlife photo collages, and I remember Mistress Fish, and in particular Mistress Fish, and a bunch of these like wild images of drag queens, drag ghouls, drag characters, slime molds, other drag experiments and experiences that were really not limited to a gender binary or even an idea of gender at all. It was right around the time when AIDS was actually just killing everybody, and not when we had highly active antiretroviral medication. So it was a really kind of spooky time to be queer, and seeing the club kid scene kind of reflected to me through the pages of Gay Times magazine. And I was a part of Youth for Social Justice, and I was helping to organize Pride when I was a teenager and did not know what I was doing. Not that I know what I'm doing now, but I really didn't know what I was doing back then. And there was no. So I started for Halloween, of course, as a lot of baby queens do. And I borrowed my sister's Le Chateau kind of brown polyester, like photo printed like Gerbera daisy, Oh yeah, it was overheating. And a plastic Marilyn Monroe wig, shake and go, and from Shoppers Drug Mart, and that was my first drag. Of course, I documented shaving my legs in the bathtub. I still have those photos, and they're very dear to me. And it took a while to kind of figure out what I was doing, and I was organizing Pride, helping to organize Pride. I wasn't organizing thing. I was sitting at the committees where people were organizing Pride, and one of the things that I found really frustrating was that there were no events that addressed the kind of gender spectrum and gender explosion that was happening in my life and my body and my friend circle. And there was no event that was accessible to youth. I talked about this at the other panel, but it's like I was able to go to the bars, and I was vouching for my friends to get into the bar at 15. But it wasn't an accessible space for young people. So I started organizing the drag race, which was originally just like, let's do a 3-event race around Scotiabank as a thing that's outside and free and accessible to youth and talks about gender stuff. And then that became an annual event and went on for 10 years. And some years we had more attendees than people showed up to the March for Freedom, which is the old Pride Parade. And it developed as I kind of saw my identity as an artist developing, and it became an opportunity to kind of, we would make a pile of vegan snacks and talk about Nolan and Hall and the shitty development that they did that blocked the best view of the city from Military Road. And we talk about like food insecurity and provide organic turnip to that little kid who won the race, who was Leona Hyde's son. I forget what his name was, but it was beautiful. Like, we of course all threw the race so the 8-year-old could win, but then he got this bunch of organic turnips as a prize at the end. So it was an opportunity to do something public at a time where it felt like visibility would mean something different than I think visibility means today. I think that there was an idea that visibility would mean rights, and that visibility would mean access to social systems and to our communities and our families again. And I think we've learned the hard way that hasn't always worked in our favor. But it was an opportunity to talk about politics and to link the politics that I had to the drag that I was doing, which I saw as seamless and inherent. And one of the ways that we did that I was really excited about was I would, in the days leading up to the drag race, I would write down a bunch of kind of disparate things, like Ian Curtis, who was the lead singer of Joy Division, who killed himself, and pro-choice politics, and just like things that were touchstone, like flash ideas for me, and then they would be put in individual envelopes and they would be distributed through the audience, and then someone was given the task of randomly ringing a bell, and then the next number of the envelope would have to be pulled, and I would have to connect whatever I was talking about at that time to the idea in the envelope. And I was a very skilled orator. Blanche, that means speaker. But it was about recognizing the connectivity of the issues that are a part of our lives, and I was really, really thankful to get to do that. I love you, panelists. I also obviously planted this because this question. I was lucky to be able to do a week-long workshop at Art City, which is an incredible arts organization in Winnipeg, a couple of years ago, and I proposed a workshop called The Applied Ethics of Drag. And it was a week-long workshop, drop-in. The Art City is an incredible organization. The folks that go there are an amazing mix of folks. Like, some are psychiatric consumer survivors, some are survivors of residential schools, some are like young families who have either kids acting as translators. Some are just like neighborhood folks who moved in because it's got cheap rent in like ever gentrifying city. So it was a wild ragtag, I think is what they say, ragtag mix. But one of the things that I think I want to kind of reiterate that I've heard on the table is about holding space for each other, and acknowledging the diversity, variety, sparkling effervescence of our differing experiences, and what that looks like. And I am excited about Johnny also kind of articulating around self-care in that, about like taking ourselves out of spaces that feel like they are making us respond in ways that are less generous. And I think that's one of the things that I get really excited about when I have an opportunity to be in community or to do like work like at that workshop in community, is to think about what are the things that I need to put in place for myself in advance so that I have the capacity to be the version of myself that I want. Like today, I would have said, if you're gonna take that piece of foam out from under your wig cap because you don't need the goddamn height, then make sure you re-stretch the medical tape so you don't have a tension headache, and it makes it like I'm the most vicious version of myself right now. All I want to do is spit poison. But thank you, Rhea and Mullen, for the Advil. They're slowly working. Right. So there's these pieces that we put in place in terms of like, I am a tired old queen. I know things about myself now in terms of what energy I have to be able to give and what energy I require for myself to be able to care for myself, so I can do this tomorrow, or I can do this for 3 more days, or I can, like, someone posted an article about how being silently pissed off is a contributing factor in autoimmune diseases for women of color. And a friend of mine posted something about, hey, I hate women of color in my social network. You have my number. Call me and vent about the shit that's pissing you off, if that will help diffuse the having to hold on to it yourself. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I have capacity as a person who moves through the world with a relatively huge amount of privilege. I'm gonna re-offer that. Also, that goes for women of color in this space. Feel free to give my number afterwards. Like there are things that I know I have capacity to do to make space in the communities and networks that I get to be a part of. And I know that there are other things that I don't have capacity for. Like, I used to run a home for wayward girls, which is just code for I had an apartment, and I grew up in a way where the door was always open, and my mother would get upset if she found out you were in our neighborhood and didn't stop by unannounced. So it's like, we could have made tea! So it took a long time for me to realize that, yeah, that's something that I love about my family. And I also know a lot of people in crisis. And I need to have a space for myself, for managing my mental and emotional wellness, where I don't have to make sure that the dishes are done every day, because that's going to create another feeling of anxiety. Like, I need to be able to shut the door, and that was a long learning to realize. So I think so. I have been circling the airport. I'm going to try and land the plane. A couple of things that I think are kind of key points. One is recognize that everyone is in pain. That every single person, when we look around the room, everyone is in pain. Whether it is psychic, whether it is emotional, whether it is physical, whether it is a combination of all of those things. It doesn't matter what the degree is. If we can recognize that we are all suffering in this room in some capacity, that can open something in us.
Thank you all for your words and your thoughts and your work. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back.
Oh my God, I want to talk forever. We can roll the tape.
You've given me a true love, and every day I thank you, love, for a feeling that's so new, so inviting, so excited. Whenever you're near, I hear a symphony, a tender melody, pulling me closer, closer to your arms. Then suddenly, ooh, your lips are touching mine, a feeling so divine, till I leave the past behind. I'm lost in a world made for you and me.
We can cut that. I would like for us to think about the weight of the meat in connection to the bones in our body, and think about the effect of gravity pulling us closer to the ground. And I would love for you to think about my mother and how I was raised to be here before you. And think of your mother in relation to my mother and how you got here and how you were raised to get to this room today, and how my mother is in the ground, and how we are all moving slowly. Yeah, some of us quicker than others. To the ground. And I would like for us to think about the ways that people distract us with spectacle, which is necessary because the world is really painful for some of us more than others. For some of us, the time passes quicker than it does for others. And to think about how to release some of that pain. And for some of us, that can be in corpse pose. I would like for us to think about, it's a whole, like, you can Google trauma release yoga. It's fucking wicked, actually. And one of my favorites is corpse pose, where you lie on your back. So you can close your eyes, you don't have to look at me. I'm not that interesting at this point. I mean, devastating, but maybe not that interesting compared to thinking about your body in corpse pose, thinking about lying on your back, finding a spot that gets comfortable for your body and your own relationship to pain and the ground, softness and hardness, and think about your palms up and allowing your ankles to release and your feet to kind of roll to the side. Think about the meat in our skin and our bodies sinking closer to the ground. It is inevitable that we will be there with the people we care about and with the people we despise, with the people that care about us and the people that hate us. We're all going to the ground. So we can open whatever is in us, in our bodies, to pull us closer to that inevitability. Happy Pride.